My name is Mong Fu. My parents are Chinese. My grandfather moved the family to Vietnam from China, so I used the Vietnamese pronunciation of my Chinese name. My Chinese name is Mong Nhan. Okay, Mong Fu. A little bit about myself. I'll be 52 in May of this year. I came to Canada when I was 8.5 years old. I left Vietnam around 5.5 years old. It's one big blur for me. I only remember details here and there, but that's basically what I'm living in upstate New York right now with my wife, and I have a 17-year-old daughter.
Okay, so you lived in Vietnam. Okay, so you lived in Vietnam for 5 years. Do you remember what that was like?
I left around 5.5. I remember bits and pieces. I remember it's weird, like what your mind choose to remember. I remember like, doing stuff with my grandmother in the countryside. I remember playing with. Apparently, when I was a kid, there's you buy these little crickets and you can make them fight each other. I remember eating street food. I remember leaving on the boat for the first time. We actually left Vietnam twice. The first time was not successful, and then the second time we were we succeeded. I remember getting caught uh, by the Coast Guard because the first time we tried to leave, it was not successful and got caught by the Coast Guard. So I remember little bits here and there, not like crazy stuff. I remember raising a chicken in the house. My father was like a tailor in Vietnam, so I think we had a chicken to lay eggs so that we save a little bit of money. I have a little bit of details here and there, not too much. If you were to drop me back in Vietnam, I probably wouldn't know where I am.
Oh, what part of Vietnam did you live in?
Saigon, that's where I live. I think from what my parents told me, I live in the more middle class area. My father had a tailor shop and he made clothing for the American GI. My mom actually was a translator for the American military. So my mom would translate. My mom could speak Chinese, Vietnamese, and English, and a little bit of French. So she was a translator for the American military when they were in Vietnam.
Oh, do you have any key memories that you have from your childhood in Vietnam?
Maybe eating some rice pudding. When I was in the countryside, walking through the mud area of the countryside, one time, this is like weird memories. I remember a bunch of guys, they caught the snake and then they hung it onto like a banana tree and then they
Hmm.
slice it open and then they were like getting the blood and put it into this cup and drinking it right away. Apparently, it's supposed to help them be more potent or maybe with snake bites and stuff like that. Just weird memories here and there, just really weird stuff. I remember just being in jail. I remember the first time we were in jail for trying to leave Vietnam. So I guess I was in a holding area for a little bit. And then I remember leaving the second time. I don't know where I left, but we hid out in this weird fish market or something, and all I smell is like fish sauce. And I also remember like leaving at nighttime. The first time we tried to leave, it was very scary because we are trying to evade the Coast Guard and stuff. Just a lot of memories here and there. I don't know. I don't know if they were traumatic or not, but just weird stuff that stayed in my mind.
What was your lifestyle like in Vietnam?
We're
Go ahead.
middle class, maybe. I think we're middle class because my father made like clothing for the American military when they got sent back home. When they finished the tour, they got sent back home. So they will see my father make clothing. I remember working in my father's tailor shop when I was a little child, getting on his sewing machine. I remember a needle going through my fingers. It's just little memories here and there, but I think we're middle class because
Mhm.
uh, my mom didn't like the communists, and I think we made okay money.
Can you fully explain the first time and the second time you tried to leave Vietnam?
We paid a fisherman to take us to Hong Kong the first time. It was just myself, my brother, my mom and dad, and two uncles. That's the first time we tried to leave, and it was not successful because we gave too much money to this fisherman, and he decided not to leave, and he swam back to shore and left
Mhm.
us by the coastline, and that's how we got caught the first time. The first time was just like more like immediate family. My brother, myself, my mom, my dad, and two uncles. We actually had a baby sister. I think she was like maybe, I don't know, 1 years old, 2 years old, and we left her behind to stay with some relative because we thought she was just too young to go with us. And then 6 months later, my mom's godmother was part of a group that organized a bigger escape. And then I think on this boat, I think there was like 150, 200 of us. I can't remember. So this one was much different. We were all packed on a little boat, and there was like 150, 200 of us on a boat. So
Mhm.
second time we left, my father basically stayed in hard labor camp for 5 years. So 6 months later, we tried again, and but my father stayed back because when you try to leave a communist country, they don't allow that to happen. They let myself, my brother, and my mom get out of jail, but my father had to stay behind. I think my uncle only stayed behind, stayed in jail for just for a little bit, like maybe 6 months or
Mhm.
something. My dad served 5 years in
Oh wow.
hard labor camp.
Mhm. Oh, how did you
Yeah.
see him then?
Oh, he came to Canada after. My father didn't come to Canada until I was like 14 years old. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Oh, what happened the first time they caught you when you tried to escape?
The
Or
fisherman, we
like,
gave him lots of money, and he decided not to take us to Hong Kong. He swam back to shore,
oh my gosh.
spent his money on prostitute and gambling. We should
Oh.
have paid him after. But I was an idiot. Screw everybody up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And what happened? Or what did you experience while you were in jail? Or like, how long did you stay there for?
I don't remember. I remember bits and pieces of it. I don't think it was not very long. Maybe like a week or so. I remember
Mhm.
sleeping on hardwood floor, concrete floor. I remember sleeping on bamboo, straw mats. I remember eating, I don't know if they're spinach or some kind of vegetable, and little fish that looked like beta. That was it. That was what we had. I remember taking showers with these weird soap. I think they're made out of fat or something. Little bits and piece of memories stayed in my mind that doesn't leave me for some reason. I remember sleeping on straw mats on a concrete floor. So that stayed with me, and then having just soup and little fish for dinner and a little bit of rice.
Mhm.
So my father basically did that for, I don't know, 5, 7 years.
Oh, so the second time when you escaped Vietnam, what country did you go to after that? Or-
So this time we went to Malaysia,
mhm.
and we were we head to Malaysia, and I want to do like a movie about this. I think the Malaysian Coast Guard was trying to deter people from going because there was just so many of us, and so the Coast Guard came and stopped, intercepted our ship, and we were out of like gas and stuff, and the motor was dying, and my mom could speak English and several other guys, and my mom was like really didn't want anything bad to happen to us, so my mom and a couple of guys jumped onto this Coast Guard ship and convinced them to help us. So hopefully they don't get in trouble. I don't think they're around anymore. But the Coast Guard told us where to go that is more sympathetic to refugees. So they fixed our engine, and they told us where to go, and then we went to a different part of Malaysia that was more sympathetic to refugees. And
Mhm.
so we went to Malaysia, and then we were on an island, Palau Bidong. That's the island that we end up on. I don't know how it got there. I remember actually traumatic. Our ship hit the shoreline, and then it almost capsized, about to fall over. Everyone was
Oh my
screaming and stuff. It
gosh.
was pitch black, and I was a little child, and I think the boat would have capsized, and so everyone was just jumping off. And a bunch of guys were trying to catch me, and I held onto the railing to dear life. I did not want to get jumped to the water because it was like pitch black and everything. I remember
Yeah.
people setting up bonfires and stuff. You have to remember, we were one of the first refugees to leave Vietnam, so I think UNICEF weren't ready for us yet. You know what I mean? It was
Mhm.
just chaotic. So if you watch the news and stuff, like when refugees leave and stuff, it's very chaotic. It's not well organized at all. You know what I mean? So I
Mhm.
think we were one of the first to arrive to Palau Bidong, probably 1978 or something like that. So it was a chaotic experience. No one was ready for us.
How did you feel when you entered? Pulau down aside, or I guess after that traumatic experience, did you feel at
You,
peace, or were you still just in that chaotic
you know what?
mindset?
I think as a child, we don't have those type of experience. Like what you're asking is more like a adult experience. I think as a child,
Mhm.
we're more like just trying to figure things out. So for me, I think it was just very chaotic. I remember lining up for food, lining up for water, lining up for rice. I remember like making things out of like makeshift tin cans and burlap bags and stuff like that. So for me, I don't think I had any. You get what I'm saying? It's not like an emotional state that an adult would attribute to. It's more like a child just trying to. I think until you become a refugee, you don't understand. It's very chaotic. You don't really have the emotional state that you arrive to when you're more at a comfort level is much different than an emotional state when you're under stress and you don't know, where your meal is coming from or you don't know where you're going. It's very chaotic, right? You have to remember this is right after the war, right? I think the war
Yeah.
ended in 70, I don't know when it ended, but 72 or 73 or something like that. And then you have this huge influx of Vietnamese people leaving toward Hong Kong and Malaysia. I don't know, did anyone try to the Philippines? I can't remember.
When you stayed in Malaysia, where did you stay in, or what was the actual place like, and what did you do like for your
Okay,
day to day?
so I think so. Don't quote me on this because I was a little 5, 6 years old. I was on the island first, and so how the process works is this: you're on an island, and then different countries will come and interview you and ask and to make sure you're suitable for that country, right? So you have Australia. Australia was a huge country, took a lot of Vietnamese. You have the French, you have the Canadian, you have the American, you have the German, you have the Dutch, right? And so what happened was the Canadian came, interview my family, like my mom, my dad. So my dad wasn't with me. My brother, my mom, and asked, "Do you want to come to Canada?" Right? And obviously, we want to go anywhere. We didn't care. So we said yes. And ironically, the next day, the Dutch, someone from Holland called our name on the PA system, asking if we want to go to Holland, but we already accepted going to Canada. So that's how it works usually in a refugee camp. You have different countries trying to interview you and seeing if you're suitable to go to that country. And so every day you have different, I don't know, officials from different countries, and they will interview you and ask you questions and stuff. And then after you get accepted to the country, we get shipped to another place in Malaysia. First, Palau is just an island, okay? It's not. And then we get shipped to another place. I don't know where. There's two camps that they ship the refugees to. I don't know which one. I'm still trying to figure those things out. And then you stay there until your medical clearance, until a nonprofit agency in whatever country you're going to is ready for you. So in our case, we were in refugee camp for 2 years because my mom had like a health problem and they didn't want to clear her for the longest time. So basically, I don't think I had any education at all in that refugee camp. So what happens? They will send all the people who got accepted to different countries to a refugee camp, and then let's just say in Canada, we situated by church group. So when the church group is ready, they will bring us in. The same thing with Australia or whatever. So that's how it works. First is the island, then the refugee camp, then to whatever country that you agree to go to.
What did you do in the refugee camp? I guess between getting interviewed for different countries.
Boring. I don't know if you have a chance to look at those pictures, but people who took those pictures, I'm very thankful for because it brought back a lot of memories. Think of it as camping, just for 2 years. So it's just
Yeah.
camping for 2 years. I remember basically swimming. I was not a very good swimmer. I remember people there are some really amazing swimmers and they would like swim. I remember one day I saw this puffer fish. It was like this fish puffed up, but they brought it to shore. I remember we made all these games that we would play. We would take bottle caps and we would like leave a bottle cap on the floor and we would chuck at it. If you hit it, you get to collect the bottle cap. So a lot of skill development game would develop based on stuff that we had with us. I remember running around in the backward and scratching. In Malaysia, there's a lot of gum trees, like sap produce gums for tires and
Mhm.
stuff, and we would scratch the trees, and then we would get the sap and roll it into a ball, and then it becomes like a actual ball that bounce. And you can make it really big. We did a lot of stupid stuff, but I don't think I ever went to school. I remember getting really excited. Someone would bring um, was it um, cold ice, like nitrate ice. Amazing.
Mhm.
Like you put it in water, and all these like like fog will come up. I was so excited about that. So little. I was there for 2 years, so just a lot of weird stuff. I remember celebrating Christmas at refugee camp, and they would show like video, not video, but they would show it. They would project the pictures of America, right? And I remember when
Mhm.
we were kids, like at the refugee camp, people were shocked about America. I remember one scene, someone showed the highway, and I don't know which city, maybe it's in LA, where it's like a highway where it's like a butterfly, like all these loops, and we're like,
Oh yeah.
wow, that's where we're going. You know what I mean? So a lot of it just, I wouldn't say. I think 2 years on a refugee camp was not bad. On the island would have been bad, but we were one of the first to be on the island, so it was pretty bad. I think later on it was more organized, but definitely on the camp was boring as hell. We ate a lot of instant noodle, just a
Mhm.
lot of stuff that I remember. If you talk to Vietnamese people who were in the refugee camp, we still have memories of eating those food. There's certain yam that we like. There's certain because that's all it was given to us. We were given
Mhm.
almost the same food all the time.
Oh,
So
wait, what did you eat every day then?
I think we got rice, and then we got
Mhm.
like instant noodle, mostly stuff that you would see in an Indonesian or Malaysian grocery store. So
Mhm.
if you go to, because you don't remember it's from Malaysia, right? So I remember like Kipling's in tomato sauce. So you will see it. Like if you go to these like Facebook group, we will laugh about it because we remember eating those things, right? And some of us would eat it just for fun, right? Because it brings back memories. Right? So
Mhm.
so I mean it wasn't gourmet meal or anything like that. It's now that you brought these things up, it's weird.
No, I get that. That kind of reminds me of the way my parents describe their eating habits in Vietnam too. It's sometimes they just crave the simple meals that they would eat when they were poor, like rice and cucumber with soy sauce, and
Yeah,
like
yeah.
maybe eggs.
Baby eggs. I didn't eat baby eggs, but boil eggs. If you put a little bit of salt on it, preserved egg, 1,000 year eggs and stuff like that. And we had because my parents, because my mom is a Christian and stuff, we would do
Mhm.
church service, and so one of the pastors would bring in food for us, so we wouldn't get bored to death.
Mhm.
But
Also,
it wasn't anything to write home about. Bless you.
mhm.
It's just too bad I was a lot younger. My memories are bits and pieces. I think if I was on the refugee camp when I was like 14 or 15, I would probably remember much like more details. You're
Mhm.
getting a perspective from a younger person, like a
Yeah, no,
Game Canada and a half. Go ahead.
I think that's cool. I know because it's. I feel like when you experience life as a kid, you're really just like you just experience it. You're not really like analyzing or anything. So it's interesting
Yeah,
to see like what you do remember from it.
bits and pieces. And I think if you
Mhm.
talk to any kids, they don't remember stuff because your brain is still like a sponge. So your brain
Yeah.
is constantly being formed up to the age of 27. So it's very hard to, especially when you're going through a traumatic experience where you just like one day you're here, one day you're here.
Okay, me too. Oh, what was your experience like actually living or sorry. What was your experience like actually escaping on a boat? Do you have memories from actually being on the boat?
So the first time we left, you can look it up. It's pretty common apparently. It's like this round boat. It's like a dinghy, but it's made out of straws, and it's round, right?
Mhm.
And so we jump on this thing, and then this thing, and then we paddle to this fishing boat. That's the first time. But I remember leaving the first time, and we didn't want to get caught, so it was like pitch black nighttime. So imagine you're a kid. you never go to the beach at nighttime, right? And it's super cold. And then this fisherman say, okay, come on. And so we all ran to this. You should look it up. This thing, it's huge. It's very common in Vietnam. It's like a little round thing made out of straw. So we all jumped into it, and then we paddled to the fishing boat waiting for us. And then we got in the fishing boat. And this detail I still remember it for whatever reason. And then we hid underneath the compartment of the fishing boat because this fisherman's supposed to take us, right? And we were down there for like a while, for a couple of hours, and we thought we were being sailed away. Instead, the fisherman just let the engine run, and then maybe 30 minutes, an hour later, the Coast Guard came and arrested us. That
What
was
the
the
heck?
first time. Oh, so I got a runny nose. It's cold here. So let me repeat myself. Well, what was the question you asked?
Oh, what was it like actually leaving on the boat?
Oh, okay.
Or
So
just
that's
like
the
any
first
key
time.
memories from that?
So that's the first time. So it's pitch dark, and it was on a little fishing boat. And maybe like a small. I was a kid. I don't remember, but it was definitely smaller than the second time we left. Second time we left, all the people wanted to leave. We all huddled somewhere. I don't know where, but where we stayed at was at this fishing market or something. It was. I know it stunk so bad. And basically, it was like this fisherman's maybe a factory or something. And all I remember is smelling fish everywhere, right? And then all of a sudden, we all what from what I from what was told to me, we paid a bunch of Coast Guard to not patrol that area that day. And so we all went onto this boat, maybe 100 of us, 150, I don't know the exact number, and then we head toward Malaysia. And the Coast Guard, we bribed the Coast Guard not to like patrol that area for half an hour. You know what I mean? But all of us who wanted to go, we had to bribe, we had to pay a fisherman, we had to bribe the Coast Guard, we had to like a whole bunch of money was given. You know what I mean? During time of chaos, people will take advantage of situation. I think the Coast Guard made money off us. A lot of monies were paid through either I think American or gold jewelries, gold necklace, gold ring, whatever. You know what I mean? And that was given to people who organized. When you when you look at human trafficking to a typical American or whatever, we don't understand. They don't understand how the inner working works. You have people who understand how to navigate or bring these people from one area to another. And so in our case, it was these fishermen who was willing to get as many people onto a boat and take us to Malaysia, and then at the same time bribe the Coast Guard from not patrolling that area during that time. So I
Oh, no.
remember stuff like that. I remember being on the boat. Um, from what I remember, from what my mom told me, I was on the boat for 7 days, and my sister was with us. And I remember at first sitting like shoulder to shoulder, and water was splashed onto us, and we would have to use like a plastic something to not let water splash onto us. Seasick and stuff, using the washroom. It was just a little hole in the ground. And then my uncle, it was a different uncle, wanted to be on the bottom of the boat instead of top of the boat. Because top of the boat was like you get water, you get rain and stuff. We went to the bottom of the boat, and that wasn't any better. It was just a bunch of sticky people underneath the boat where there's no air filters or anything. It's just you guys a bunch of people just laying around the bottom of the boat, and that was disgusting. I think the top of the boat was a little bit better. You were exposed to the wind and the air and stuff, but you get wet all the time. I remember sitting really no space. We were all cuddled up. I think they were trying to pack us in as much as possible onto a boat. And this is why when you watch the news and people who leave Cuba, the boat capsized, that's the reason why. It's because the human trafficker is trying to get as many people onto the boat as possible so they can make as much money as possible.
Do you have any other just key memories in general from either like living in Vietnam? Actually, do you have any
Yeah,
other key memories that you have just from living in Vietnam or being on the boat or
yeah.
just like
So
life in Malaysia too?
if you join those Facebook group page, it brings back a lot of memories. But there was actually a couple of doctors and nurses who joined those Facebook group page, and hopefully they'll upload photos and stuff. But I remember a lot of Vietnamese people call it the big white boat, and basically that's Doctor Without Frontier. I
Mm-hmm.
forget how you pronounce it in French, but they, I remember that big white boat, and something really personal happened. My younger sister actually passed away on that big white boat. 7 days
Oh.
on the boat and being in the island and stuff. A lot of stress for her. So she was on that boat for like maybe 4 or 5 days, and then she died, and that was like very painful for my mom. And then my cousin was born on that island, and he was born on that boat. So ironically, my cousin is probably Malaysian citizen. I don't know if he's a Malaysian citizen, but he was born on that island, but he's a Canadian citizen. So I remember, I wouldn't say one day, but within a short time span, my sister wasn't around, and then my cousin was born. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a memory. A lot of memories. I remember people being very entrepreneurial. They would. This one lady would build like a baking kiln out of mud or whatever, and then she would just take the flour and start making banh mi, like the dough, the bread, not the actual banh mi, because we didn't have anything to eat. But that she
Mm-hmm.
was amazing. I remember making cooking stove out of back in the days. You would do cooking oil, and they would be served in a metal tin can, and we would cut the tin cans and create a stove out of it. That was the island part. Just a lot of memories. That's why I want to record this. And I remember just coming to Canada the first day. It was so cold. I remember like a lot of bits of memories. Living in refugee camp could be pretty crazy. Young men, nothing to do. There's gambling. I remember one time a bunch of guys were chasing this other guy down the street in refugee camp, and I think they killed him or something. They were chasing him down with knives and stuff. I remember this is why I honestly believe that you gotta have a refugee. Like in America, we just let people come in. Not everyone's good, right? I remember
Yeah.
this girl maybe sleeping around and causing drama and stuff, and because you have to remember these people don't know when they're gonna go to their country. There's different groups. Like we would go to like church, and then there's Catholic church. There's different groups and stuff. I remember doctor doing a final checkup on my family before we come to Canada, and they told
Mm-hmm.
my mom that I have a lazy eye, so an eye that doesn't work. And they told my mom that I need glasses, but she didn't even know about those things. You know what I mean? Because you don't have the medical care and stuff. My mom got really frustrated about coming to Canada because we were in refugee camp for 2 years, and so she wrote this letter and she said, "Listen, make up your mind. Like, when can we come to Canada? If not, we'll go to Australia or whatever other
Mm-hmm.
countries." Because we were there for 2 years, and most of the time people would be in refugee camp anywhere for 3 to 6 months, and they're out of there. Like my aunt and uncle,
Oh.
and they were there for maybe 3 to 6 months, and they came to Canada right away. You know what I mean? And we stayed behind for another 2 years. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
we came to Canada like maybe 2 years after they came. We were in refugee camp a lot longer than necessary. You know,
Oh.
toys. I think playing marbles. We little kids were very good at that, playing marbles. What else? Making little paper airplanes. We were very good at that. I wish I could find a photo of myself in Asia in the camp. Maybe one day someone will post a photo and I'll say that's me. I have no photos or whatever. It's just memories in my head. And
Mm-hmm.
but one of my goal is to visit that island, Palau Binong, and maybe the refugee camp before I get
Mm-hmm.
too old, and maybe take my daughter to that island. Like my wife is white, and my
Mm-hmm.
daughter is like half white and half Chinese. I don't think she understands what motivate me or what I perceive the world. I honestly believe that if you went through certain things and you get out of it, it shapes who you are. You know, and
No,
so
definitely.
I think when we were talking about it, I think people don't understand that guys like myself, your dad, all the people went through stuff. We navigate the world a little bit differently, and it's not uncommon. I talk to refugees from Russia. I talk to people from Afghanistan, and the way we view the world is a little bit different. I think we're a little bit more hardcore. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm willing to work 18 hours a day. I sleep at my gym. I sleep at my office, and it's okay. Like, other people think it's like a big deal. You know what I mean? So I know I sanctuate a little bit.
But I guess just to continue that, then how do you see life, or just like your life, or no? What's your perspective on life and just like your future and stuff like that? Do you just see as purely as I'm gonna do this to survive, or I don't know, just tell me
I
about it.
think everyone's different based on your psychological makeup and how you navigate the
Mm-hmm.
world. I'm like this weird person. I didn't choose the right career path. So when I was in Toronto, I wasn't struggling as much, but I moved to upstate New York and I wasn't working in I'm not working in my field. So I'm not making the money that I could be making, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
still very entrepreneurial. I run an MMA gym. I have an online business and I'll be doing podcasts, social media, graphic design, all these things. But I think anybody else would have given up, right? Like they'll just work their 9 to 5 job. And I work a crappy 9 to 5 job. And then after my 9 to 5 job, I go to my office and I design 5, 6 hours. So if you go to my
Mm-hmm.
YouTube or like you go to my website, you see all these design and I have not stopped designing. Like just keep on pushing myself. And I don't know if other refugees are the similar, but or maybe it's just me because I supported myself all through art school. My parents didn't have any money for me,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know. I don't know. I can't say what other people how other people perceive the world. But if you have a minute, check out Gary Vaynerchuk. He's a Russian refugee, and he's worth like $400 million, and he runs one of the biggest ad agency, new media agency in the world. And he talks about his refugee experience all the time. A whole bunch of influencer and motivational speakers. They all they leave other countries, right? But they all have that drive, that grit. But I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
all refugees have it. You know what I mean? It just depends on your personality. I think I think going through that experience at a young age, I think reinforced that grit.
Oh,
Did
I
you?
guess.
Do you
Oh, sorry.
sorry, does your father see the world similar to the way I see the world?
Pretty much. Like every time I talk to my parents, like my mom wasn't a boat person, but like both of them, when they talk about their experience in Canada, it was just very much like they'll do whatever to get where they want, or especially in terms of survival. Like my dad is
Yeah,
very much the same as you, where like he'll sleep at work, he doesn't care. He'll work the long days, he doesn't care, because anything is pretty much better, or not even better. It's just like, they're just willing to do it, no questions.
I'm gonna shoot a video talking about this, but there was a song back in the early 80s, maybe mid 90s. It was a rock and roll song. And in one of the lyrics, it was really weird. It was like a 3 word part in this lyrics. And it goes, "You don't have to live like a refugee," right? It was like a rock and roll song. And it was the weirdest thing. I'm going to quote it. Okay. Now, when I heard it, I'm like, what the hell, right? And I think partly because once you live a certain way, so I'm gonna shoot a video talking about this. So you don't have to live. So it's a famous rock group, Tom Petty and the Heartbreaker, and the actual song is called Refugee, right? But there's Tom Petty. Tom Petty is the big rock and roll group. Okay, one thing I find that I wouldn't say happy. I come to terms with it. Is that I'm going to segue a little bit. You go through several stages of development. You go through beta and tetra. Right, tetra is the subconsciousness of what your mind gets feed on. So if your parents are always talking about money and has a struggle about money, subconsciously when you become an adult, you will view the world as like always money problems. If you come from a very wealthy family and you always have these amazing job like your parents, then somehow subconsciously you will get these amazing job, right? Now my parents struggled all their life, and when they came to Canada they struggle, and I'm struggling all the time, right? And I don't have to. I can be at home right now watching TV working a crappy 9 to 5 job. But instead, I work a 9 to 5 job and then I'm at the gym designing or training people to fight. You get what I'm saying? And in a way, I feel like a slight disconnect. Now, it doesn't help that my wife is like white, like being in America all her life, middle class white, live in a small town. It doesn't help that my daughter doesn't really want to get to know what affected me. She knows I'm very driven. And so, in a way, I feel like the lyrics are so powerful. I wouldn't say it brainwash you, but sometimes we feel like we have to live a certain way, and it's bad sometimes because I feel like, why am I so cheap? I'm not cheap when it comes to my family, but why am I so frugal? Why am I putting in like freaking 12 hours a day? Why do I have all these stupid design projects that no one's paying me? I'm just building all these skills. You know what I mean? And I think because during my formative year, there's I don't know if you heard of the scarcity mindset. And so a scarcity
Oh
mindset
yeah.
was programmed into me, not in a bad way. Like, you get what I'm saying? I don't know, but I
Mhm.
see it very commonly. Now, what happened is it's based on where you were in your refugee journey. You get what I'm saying? Like my
Mhm.
cousin doesn't have any of that because they were like born in Canada or born in Malaysia. I have
Mhm.
these type of outlook because I was around 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. My brother outlook is a little bit different because he's 2 years younger than me. Did you get what I'm saying? People
Yeah.
come so different waves of refugees or immigrants view the world differently, even though we look the same. People don't understand. I talk to people who got on a plane from Vietnam and came to Canada because we sponsor them. And the way they view Canada is much different than a refugee. So,
I guess like backtracking a bit, what was your experience like actually coming to Canada? Or just like having to sorry, let me think of how to reword it. What was your experience have like actually coming to Canada and having to integrate into the new culture?
so obviously there's bullying. I remember got beat up like several times. There's one big kid sat on top of me and pounded my chest.
Oh
A
my
lot of
god.
bullying stuff. I wish I didn't have to go through them, but I lived in a really small town, 2.5 hours, I think, south of Vancouver, in a small town called Chilliwack. I think it's
Mhm.
between Abbotsford and Vancouver. And I got bullied a lot. I got into one big fight, and I was very proud of myself. I actually challenged this kid to a fight after school, and it was raining that day. It was muddy, and we ended up being best friends. Like we ended up being friends.
Oh.
A couple of years ago, he found me on Facebook and asked me how I was doing and stuff. It's like, you know what I mean? I think he's shocked that I run an MMA gym. You know what I mean? I'm like this. I'm not a big guy. I'm only 5'4". So can you imagine? I was like, I didn't have the right food and stuff. My brother's 5'10", right? And I think because he had better
Mhm.
nutrition. But during my formative year, I didn't have the right food and stuff. So when I came to Canada, I got bullied, beat up a lot. There was no ESL program. So to this day, my English is still all over the place. I got to skip a grade because I applied myself. So I was 2 grades behind, and then I got to skip a
Mhm.
grade. So when I graduate, instead of typically graduating at 18, my daughter's going to graduate 17. Instead of graduating at 18, I graduated like around like 18 and a half, almost 19.
Mhm.
But that's, I think that's reasonable considering for 2.5 years, I didn't have any. On top of that, you're learning a different language and stuff. Your typical, I got to skip, I got to skip 1 grade with 4 other kids who were Vietnamese refugees because we all went through the same thing where we were like in refugee camp too long, right?
Mhm.
And so all 4 of us got to skip grades together. We got to skip grade 6 and go right to grade 7, and that really messed us up a little bit. But they didn't want us to be like in school too long. They felt like we were just excelling really fast. I think it's the maturity. So a couple of the kids actually did really well. They're like scientists and stuff. But in Vancouver at that time, 4 of us got to skip grade, and then they pulled us out to help us with the extra need stuff. But it was not uncommon for people like myself who were behind in schooling. So I had to deal with that, dealing with like racism and stuff like that. But I think it's bound to happen, especially kids don't know you and stuff. You look so different. Physically, you're smaller, so you don't have the power to, you don't have the ability to defend yourself. You don't speak the right language. To this day, I still have an accent, right? My brother has zero accent. Ironically, my daughter grew up with me and thinks I don't have any accent.
Yeah,
But
to be honest, I don't really notice an accent.
my daughter would talk to her friends and they go, "Oh, your dad has this weird." My daughter goes, "Does he?"
Oh, I don't really
Yeah,
hear it. Oh.
I still have it on a few words, but my brother has zero, like zero. What? On a side note, I might do all these videos or blog posts about different memories and what I learned from it. But I
Mhm.
think a lot of refugees go through different adaptation stage. You mentioned that your dad's 10 years older than me. How old's your
Yeah,
dad
pretty
now?
much. He's in his
How old's your
60s.
dad? In his
I don't know
sixties.
what
Okay, so your dad's like
specifically. Yeah.
8 years older than me then. So your dad's probably experience is a little bit different. Your dad probably had to like right away jump into high school and then get a job. I noticed that people like all my cousins who grew up like who were born in Canada, they are much more successful career wise than I am, right? Because
Mhm.
there was I think there was much more stability. Do you get what I'm saying? I might shoot a video talking about that, but I feel like I lived the best life I could. Everything was what it is. Trying to give you
Well,
as much insight as possible.
oh no, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess another question is, so you're talking about how your experience like immigrating and like being a refugee affects the way you view your life now. Do you have
Yep.
other moments in your day-to-day life that kind of remind you of that time? Or like
Yeah.
just
Like today I went to a job interview and I was talking about my boss. I used to work in the fashion industry, so a lot of my boss were Jewish, and some of my boss were actually Holocaust survivors, like they were little kids.
Mhm.
So it affected the way
Yeah.
they view the world. You know what I mean? Like I have Jewish boss who has like passports to 3 different countries and have
Oh
10,
my god.
$20,000 in their safety box, like in their safe at home. And at any moment in time, they're
Mhm.
ready to leave, like because they grew up during the Holocaust, so it affected them. You know what I mean? And so for me,
Yeah.
I have this grit, I have this drive. You get what I'm saying? And if you look at me physically, you're like, oh, this guy doesn't look very tough, but freaking, I'm tough. Like, and I think it's because of that refugee experience. And I pushed through things. I supported myself all through art school. When I was in fashion school, I won this huge award, and I beat out students from a 4 year program. And I was only in it for 6 months in the fashion school. And it's because I just
Oh
have
my
this
god.
grit, this thing that I just go after it. If opportunities are presented to me, I will go after it. You know what I mean? To the my best of my ability. And most people, well, let's just say you work 10 hours, right? And then you're like, okay, I have to sleep now. I'll work 10 hours, maybe take an hour nap and get back up and push in another 3 hours. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I think it's part of me. I'm 52 now. And some people, I wouldn't say weirded out, but they feel like, why do you still have so much energy, so much drive, so much creativity? And I think partly because I'm a designer, but I think partly because of my formative year. I mean, but my brother's very different than me. He's a manager at some grocery stores in Vancouver, but I think he had, in a way, very similar outlook. I just want to, sorry, I just want to wrap this up because I don't want to slow you down. I feel like the hardship that I went through is part of my identity, not in a bad way.
Mhm.
Like it's not a badge of honor or anything like that. It's just part of like it's intertwined into my DNA. So
This is not random, but you mentioned how you went to fashion school and then you're like in the film industry for a bit. Can you talk a bit about being an artist and also having that immigrant grit mindset? Because I feel like that's very interesting since I'm a film student as well and everyone on my team is really into creative stuff. So I just I don't know, tell me about what it was like pursuing that and were you ever
sure.
scared or
I think it's based on personality. Like all my cousins have boring, I wouldn't say boring careers. They make crap load of money. They're so successful. One of my cousins
Mhm.
is a pharmacist. Then he got an MBA and now he's an executive. Like, he has a
yeah.
$1 million house and stuff. You know what I mean? I think two things going for me. One, my parents were tailors and my mom was a seamstress. So at a young age, I was exposed to clothing. And then I wanted to be an engineer because I love building stuff. And no one told me you can do other stuff. I remember when I was a kid, I would doodle. Like I couldn't draw, but I would doodle and I would invent like self-sharpening scissors. And now you see it in the store, like self-sharpening scissors. I invented this pants where you zip from the hem and it folds up, like cargo pants and stuff.
Mhm.
I was a kid. I created those things. Weirdest thing. And then I did 1 year of engineering and I bombed. I couldn't handle calculus and applied physics. And so I said, you know what, let's try something different. And so I applied, I went to this vocational fashion school. They accept almost anybody. It's a $5,000 course. You're there 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. It's a crash course. And you graduate with this like trade diploma, right? And I
Mhm.
went in and for whatever reason, I was like a fish to water. I just picked it up. I still couldn't draw. I never went to art school. I never did any art class in high school, nothing. But I was reading fashion magazines since I was 14. So by the time I went to
Mhm.
fashion school at 18 and a half, 19, I already had like great aesthetic great understanding of aesthetic and clothing and stuff. And I think also because as a guy, I was detached. What I noticed about a lot of my classmates was they were very attached to the clothing. Oh, I can't wear that. I don't like red. Oh, I can't wear that. It doesn't look good on me. As a male designer, we don't care. We're not wearing the clothes, right? So I think that helped a
Yeah.
lot. And I think it also helped a lot that I wanted to be an engineer. So the way I looked at clothing, I understood it from the draping to the design to the aesthetic to everything. Most designers only can draw beautiful pictures, but I understood it. I know how to draft patterns. I know how to cut patterns. I know how to make clothing, construct them. So I know
Mhm.
how to make clothes like from top to bottom. Some designers don't know how to do that, and I don't know. It's really weird. I might be like an enigma, and but my parents didn't have any money for me. I worked in my family Chinese restaurant business for almost 10 years, and they were supposed to put aside money for me to go to college. That didn't happen. And to make a long story short, I moved to Toronto to pursue my fashion career. And then I ended
Mhm.
up going to the Art Center of Central Technical School. And one time they had a 3 year adult art program. It was free, but you had to apply to
Mhm.
get in. And I got in and I did the 3 year art program on top of working at nighttime and going to school in the day. It was free. The only thing you had to do is show up. They used to have a 3 year adult program. And a lot of kids, a lot of people would transfer from that program to, yep, there's a Google article, Free Art School for Adult at Central Tech, 2007. So I think what happened is because I didn't have any money, a lot of people would not do that program because a lot of the a lot of the a lot of the credits weren't transferable, right? But for me, I didn't really care. I think because I'm gritty, and when I got out of Central Tech, I already had 2 years of fashion training, and then 3 years of art training. And then when I was at Central Tech, I focused on graphic design and photography. And so when I came out,
Mhm.
I had I got to work in the fashion industry because there wasn't there were no fashion designers who knew how to use Adobe Photoshop, Quick Express, Adobe Illustrator. It was very
Mhm.
hard to find a designer who knew graphic design and vice versa. And I just happened to have training in both disciplines. So it was
Mhm.
easy for me to get jobs in the fashion industry 20 somewhat years ago. Anyways, just a side note for yourself, the, for the filmmaking thing, you really have
Mhm.
to find your. I can talk about that later, but it's a grind. It's a grind because everybody wants to do it. You know, I mean, it's so glamorous.
No, definitely. I know that. I feel like a lot of people go into film just thinking about the big films and how like grand it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but it's okay.
Um,
Sorry.
this is how you know if someone. This is how you know if someone is really passionate about something. You look at the
Mhm.
body of work. Okay, it's called body of works, right? For example, Picasso, right? We only know like some of his paintings and drawings, but he literally created 1,000 artwork. The
Mhm.
Beatles spent probably 4,000 hours in Germany playing at different nightclubs, getting booed off
Yeah.
stage, right?
Mhm.
If you go to my YouTube channel, I have 1,000 YouTube videos. I'm constantly doing stuff, right? And that's the grit. People don't want that. People want the glamorous. Go to a nice Starbucks, sip a little bit of coffee, talk to their friend, talk art, whatever. And today I went
Mhm.
to the job interview, for example, and they were saying they interview all these newly graduate graphic design students, and they're shocked that they were like very low understanding of entrepreneurship, art history, whatever. Like they couldn't give, they didn't have that real world experience. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I think if you think like the education you get at film school, art school is good enough, it's not.
Oh, definitely not. No, definitely. I feel like this goes for all kind of creative streams. It's like school's literally just a starting base, and it's not even the bare minimum. It's just like it's just there. I feel like school just helps you like set up what you need
Yeah.
to do.
You know what's the crazy thing is?
Mhm.
You can literally don't have to go to school anymore and learn everything
Yeah,
there is to be an artist. That the school validates your
like
experience and the time you
credentials.
put in, the time you put in,
Yeah,
and
no, exactly.
to, up until recently, when I moved here, I couldn't get any job because I didn't have a 4 year degree program. I had all these
Mhm.
schoolings, right? For the longest time in Canada, fashion there was only a couple of schools that offer a fashion degree. At one time, Ryerson was only a 3 year college. I don't know if you know that.
Oh, I was like, it used
Okay.
to be more of a technical college, right?
It was Ryerson Polytechnic, right? And it was a 3-year fashion program. And then there was a fashion school in Alberta, but it was crap. It was like fashion history. And so
Yeah.
I had all these fashion training stuff, then all these art training, and I look at other people's portfolio. My portfolio is equally as good as them, if not better. And my knowledge, my understanding, my drive. But when I moved here to America, a lot of employers, they want to make sure they don't get fired or can justify their hiring. So they look at the degree.
Another question I have for you is, what advice would you give to young people like me? Or sorry, wait, let me just reword that. What advice would you give to young people like me with kind of life and our own future? Like, like, any advice for dealing with hardships, or like when it comes to our mindset and how we see the world?
I put up a video on my YouTube channel like last week. Dana White, he's the president of UFC. And one of the advice he said is don't listen to anybody, which is ironic. It's
Yeah.
true in a way, right? It's true in a way. If you're very driven and you want to do things out of the beaten path, as in accounting, that's very rigid. Like it's A, B, C, D, very linear. Being an artist, being a designer, that's non-linear. The minute you think is linear, maybe 1 out of 100 will get that job because the father or somebody knows somebody and they got that job. Or maybe the father put out $20,000 to let the kid start a fashion line. And then the father does a lot behind the scene to get that line going, right? Or that film career going. But the average person like you and me who don't have that support is a lot of grind. And you cannot take your eyes off the prize, especially for females. You get married, you have children, and before you know it, you're no longer doing it. And I don't want to sound mean, but probably 95% of females, they all go to like fashion school, art school, whatever. They get married, have children, and boom. It's just a blip in the radar. You know what I mean? And you gotta treat it like a job. Literally, I feel guilty for jumping on the computer and creating little projects for myself. We should be Facebook friends, but you see all the crap I do. I'm doing print on design. I'm doing printing. I mean, it's just the amount of books I have on art and design. It's just crazy, right? I treat it like a job. I literally treat it like a job, even though I'm not working in the field. I have 2 clients. I have to finish editing a video for a client, and then I need to design a posters. These are like freelancing job, but sometimes I don't have freelancing job, and then I would keep up with the design all the time. And if you do this all the time, you it's like karate. Your knuckle gets hard, the calluses, and you get so good at it. When you walk into the interview, and if the person knows what they're looking at, they will hire you. Do you get what I'm saying? So what I'm saying is this: you're a filmmaker, you should be shooting film all the time. You should be like uploading 1-hour film every week, literally every week, and then improve on it by 1% every week. And literally your goal is, after a year, I will have 100 maybe 5-minute videos and maybe 200 1-minute videos, right? Imagine you do that for 1 year, you can get a job anywhere. And I bet you none of your friends will do it. They won't do it. They will say, I got this degree from George Brown. And I don't want to sound mean. I know what George Brown is. I lived in Toronto. I seen George Brown fashion students. I seen George Brown art students. There are a dime a dozen. Okay, I'm serious. Okay, it's not like a spectacular film school or art school, right? And the higher education don't give a shit. They don't care. They sucker you in. Okay, they take your money, and then you're out, and you got this little piece of paper. It's like a sugar baby relationship. Everyone's happy. You paid your money, they gave you this piece of paper, and you're out of there. No one asked the school, hey, what is the employment rate of your student? How many film students are actually working in the field? How many art students? I bet you it's less than single digit. It probably is. You know what I mean? And no one tell you these guys. But if this is something you really want to do, you have it so much easier. When I was in fashion, I had to lug around a huge camera to do photo shoot. Now I do ad campaigns and stuff with my little smartphone. If you have an iPhone, you can shoot amazing cinematography and stuff. the amount of online software. If you, for the longest time, I was designing on my Chromebook because everything was like on the cloud. I couldn't afford like an actual laptop. And the minute you think you need a certain tool or a certain software, you already fell into that shiny object trap. But I bet you the average person won't do that. I don't want to sound mean, but I bet you maybe you're doing it. When I was in fashion school, I would do the fashion assignment and I would do other assignment that was not assigned to me. That's
Yeah.
how crazy passionate I was. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And everyone went through the same amount of schooling, but I got out of that schooling so much more because I took advantage of where I was at. You know what I mean? So what I bet you the kid who stay behind every day and get kicked out of the school building, that's the kid who's gonna get the good job. Everybody else
Mhm.
who leave, class ends, I'm sorry, it's just another diploma for you guys. I
Mhm.
hope I'm not sounding mean, but
No, I
you know,
feel like that's like the nature of pursuing an art career in any way. It's like you need to know the reality before you even go into it. Otherwise, you're just being a bit naive. So no, I completely get that.
I feel like the art career is glamorous because you can say I'm an artist, but it's not because it's non-linear.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing, okay? You know what a funnel is, right? Like a funnel, like a
Hmm.
water funnel, whatever, right? Almost
Oh
every
yeah.
art program, the funnel is this big, right? Anyone can get in, and
Hmm.
then when you graduate, then that's when everyone's trying to get that job. Now in STEM field,
Yeah.
like pharmacy, doctor, whatever, the funnel is this tight. So when you get in, when you get out, you're guaranteed to get a job. No one
Hmm.
explained that to you guys. No one explained that to me. Like you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So 1,000 students go into art program and maybe 50 job. But in the STEM field, right? Let's just say chemical, biochemical engineer, whatever. 50 students get in, 47 of them will get a job because the selection process already pre-made before you went into the school, right? And so when you
Yeah.
graduate from an art program, don't think you're special. You're not. You're like a bunch of sheep who I'm being honest, you know what I mean? I hope I'm not being
Hmm.
I guess I could be honest, you know what I mean? And so now you're competing while the STEM students are competing before they got in. And once they're in, like their life is set. You get what I'm saying? But I hope I'm not diminishing. Like graduate with your bachelor degree and just go for it. And just we can shoot more videos talking about this because I'm looking for a collaborator to do all these like talks and stuff like that. But I don't think. I mean, did you ever had talks like this with your film teachers or teachers at your school?
I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I don't really. I'm pretty sure they've had talks like this. I don't know. I'm just like I feel like I've always known this, so I don't really take note if they've talked about in school or not.
Okay.
But
So for example, when
yeah.
you graduate, what's your are you graduating this summer?
No, I'm
Like, are you
graduating next
graduating?
year.
Oh, next year. So you still have time. My
Yeah.
suggestion is this: it's a lot of work for you, but I would jump on YouTube. I would jump on the latest trend. Twitch, YouTube just started doing YouTube live vertical. Become an
Hmm.
expert at that. Get expert at Facebook. Like just get on all the platform, learn it in and out. Not just the filmmaking, but the business side and how you can help business get on social media and how to make money. The last 6 jobs I've been applying for all these jobs, and all these business are freaking out. Their YouTube channels suck. No one watched their YouTube channel. No one watched their Instagram videos. No one watched any of the stuff they put out. And we're talking about these are companies with 200 stores across America, and no
Hmm.
one wants to watch the crap, and they're desperate. Now imagine if you can solve their problem, right? You know what I mean? And the only way to do that is you have to start doing it now. And then when you graduate, you will graduate with your degree and all these skill set. And then when you and your friend go for the job interview, you're gonna stick out like a sore thumb, and your confidence level is gonna be so high because technically you were already employed. It's just that you didn't have a boss yet. You gave like job assignment to yourself. Do you get what I'm saying? And it's really
Yeah.
difficult to do, especially if you have to work. I don't know if you have to work outside of school, but most people will do that. Most people will just go to school, go party on the weekend, have hang out at the coffee shop, whatever, talk art. They know what they're talking about, and half the times you guys don't. I'm just being honest. So,
Mhm.
anyways, I apologize if I'm talking like Asian dad.
No, don't worry.
So,
I
yeah.
understand. Okay, so I guess my final question is, what helps you deal with hardship or just persevere?
I want to be honest. The last couple of years haven't been good for me. I work at a job where I basically sweep floors and clean toilets and run a grocery store, right? So I feel like, oh man, like here's me designing. I used to be on MTV and I used to design for all these companies, and now I'm like scrubbing toilets and shit like that. So life has goes up and down, and there are times where I feel like I don't want to live anymore, and there are times where I feel like I have to, right? And it helps a little bit that I have like
Mhm.
my daughter. Like, I don't want her not to have a father. You know what I mean? That's one
Mhm.
thing that keeps me going a little bit. Number two, just know that nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent. You may think it's permanent, it's not. The only time it's permanent is death. You kill yourself, that's it, right? Or you go to jail, but nothing is permanent. You could go through the hardest heartbreak and you think you won't get out of it, and then you get out of it. So nothing is
Mhm.
permanent. Just remember that as a young person. And it always look perception is not reality. Okay. So you may think your friend's doing well and they're not. You may think your friend's not doing well and they're doing amazing. You may think you're not doing well when you're doing well. It's really weird. Learn to navigate the world, learn to understand that the way you see the world may be biased, may be wrong, may be incorrect. Learn to understand nothing's permanent. And learn, I guess it depends how much grit you have. You gotta, if you want something a lot, you gotta put in that time. Like it is freaking lonely out there. Like I'm working on my eBay business by myself 4 or 5 hours every day outside of work. And it's the grind. And now if you can find someone like a life partner who's like totally on board with you, you lucked out. But very hard to find. So I apologize if I'm going all over the place. It's not really Vietnamese, but maybe
No,
it
no, don't.
is. Does that help you understand like the advice I gave
No,
you?
no, I think it's all really good and really relevant. No, I think that was a good answer.
When you ask him about when you interview him, is his experience similar to mine?
Pretty much, like the way he went to the same island as you, and then the way he talked about being on that boat for like 7 days and like 6 nights was pretty much the same, and then eating instant noodles was the same pretty much. Just like all of that, and then pretty much the same when I ask for advice. It's literally just like, oh, just keep trying, keep doing your stuff, keep learning, keep doing all of this.
Good. I think also because your dad, I don't know if your dad's Chinese or Vietnamese or whatever, but in the Asian culture, a lot of us we're it's a Confucius society, right? So Confucianism teach a certain way of how to navigate life.
Mhm.
So it's embedded into our culture. You know what I mean? And especially first generation immigrants, when we come to America,
Yeah.
nothing's given to us, right? So by default, we have to
Mhm.
fight for it. You get what I'm saying? And then the second
Yeah.
generation is a little bit better, right? So for example, all my cousins, they're like accountants, doctors, whatever. And then third generation live really well. And so I'm like in this weird situation where I'm first generation, maybe a little bit second generation because I came at such a young age. But
Mhm.
my mom and dad, my mom wasn't established because she was a single mom, and my dad didn't come to Canada until 5 6 years later. So in a way, my mom
Mhm.
was struggling for the longest time. And a lot of my relatives, a lot of my cousins came from really stable home, so they were a little bit farther off than me. So that's something that's interesting. Maybe this is a side project you can do where you analyze different maturity of that immigrant. You get what I'm saying? That refugee.
Oh
You get what I'm
yeah,
saying?
I'm actually.
Like,
I would say I'm doing that with the documentary, not with the different stages of when people left the country, but I'm actually planning on interviewing just like some second generation immigrants to
yeah.
talk about like their mindset about life.
And the second generation immigrants will talk about how their mom or dad are hard on them or whatever, like
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
Tetra stage. And on a side note, I had to like up until recently, I had to be very careful what I say to my daughter because I
Hmm.
realized that my daughter's is not Asian. She lives in a upstate New York in a very we're not rich but we're not poor either. And so she's like
Yeah.
very comfortable. And I cannot impose my idea of the world onto her. You get what I'm saying? I can't get upset with her this and that. Just like, let her live her life, let her be happy. You get what I'm saying? And sometimes Asian parents don't understand. They don't understand how to do that. Do you get what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
they're just like so angry, critical all the time. And this is gonna be very personal to me. This is why I'm not close to my mom because she's so
Mhm.
angry and you know what I mean? Just like I can't even have a conversation with her without her screaming at me. And she's gotten better because I haven't like my mom will come visit me every couple of years, but I moved away from home when I was 19, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not close to my family at all, and it's unfortunate they don't understand that their hardship affected them psychologically. It's almost like trauma. But I feel like Asian kids whose Asian mom or dad are really hard on them, be a little bit more empathetic because they don't know that they're being hard on you, right? Maybe they're working on a scarcity mindset or a mindset where they don't understand it because you don't know how you do unless you're very enlightened. And then on the flip side, I don't know any Asian dad or whatever will see this video, but they need to dig deep into themselves. You get what I'm saying? Because a lot of
Mhm.
times when you talk, a lot of times it's a reflection of your own inner yearning, fear, frustration, insecurity. So everything I talk to you are my fear, insecurity, and yearning, and vice versa.
Mhm.